Hi, everybody. I'm Rony Fortich, and watch me talk about how I shifted from doing what I love out of pure happiness to making a lifelong career out of it. Watch now. Even I had no idea that when I took that board, that when I checked accountancy on 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 that application form, that I would find myself doing musical theater, writing musicals, or being in Hong Kong for 12 years, let alone MDing ASEAN closing ceremonies, right? Or sorry, and not to sort of pat my own shoulder, but like receiving the toim. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
none of that was planned. I mean, I just knew, constantly moved in the direction of like, okay, I feel stuck. I don't want to be here. What do I need to do? And I kind of, so that I can get unstuck. So I think one of the if is to one of the best advice I can give anybody is to.
This is LeaderSHIFT with JP Adena, and I'm very excited to introduce to you Mr. Rony Fortich.
Hi, everybody, and hi, JP. Thanks for having me. Haven't seen you in ages, but thanks for having me
Yes.
on your podcast.
Yes, actually, I have not seen so many in ages, right? It's
Yeah,
we're in,
actually, no.
we're in 2 years into the pandemic, so I'm very excited to see a familiar face again. So this is LeaderSHIFT with JP Adena, and I'm curious to know what industry are you a leader of, Ronnie?
I'm a musical director in primarily musical theater, the musical theater industry here in the Philippines. But I do sort of stretch out into non-musical theater activities and do events and work with pop singers sometimes, and um, just like any kind of event that could use music.
Anything about music, so it's into the arts, right?
Yes. So events and composing, arranging, movie scoring. I've kind of been able to stretch out for quite a bit.
I remember the first time I saw you, Ronnie, but I want to ask the question. I want to throw back the question to you. Do you happen to remember the first time we met?
Not exactly, but
A
you tell
memorable
me.
one, maybe a memorable one.
The first time we met, I mean, like
It's hard to know, right? But maybe a
it's hard to
memorable.
remember. I mean, if you think about, like, it's funny because like working at Hong Kong Disneyland, you have I am one person who will meet like 30 dancers in one go, or 15 singers. I remember, like, whenever there was a new cast, that I would always have to try to remember everybody's names. And
Uh-huh.
to be honest, like 1 year later, they're adding me on Facebook, and I'm like, okay, which
Who's
one
this
was this
again?
again? You know, like, um, I remember. I mean, I won't. I'm trying. It's sort of. I'm lost for exact moments in time, but there are definitely some faces I remember, and yours is one of them. So,
Awesome. Because
what was the memory? How do you remember meeting me? What do you?
I remember because they said it's musical director Ronnie Fortich, right? And the Fortich put me off. I'm like Fortich, right? So I have
It's
I
Bohol.
have a face connected to that surname, and then I saw you.
Mm.
Oh, is he Filipino? That's the first question. Is he Filipino? And then of course, I heard you talk, and it's all English. So there's still the question: is he Filipino? Like a second look, right? So, and then
Oh, that's funny.
I remember we have a conversation because of we're recording the music of a certain show in Hong Kong Disneyland, and then you brought me to your office, and then I saw the
Setup.
the things that you use to record and do awesome music in Hong Kong Disneyland. So that's the reason why, because I'm a frustrated singer. That's why
Ah,
I'm a frustrated singer. I tried, but it didn't. We didn't jive. So I
well,
went with
I
the
think
flow.
we're all led to where we will shine the most. So I think.
Yes, and I think this is this podcast is something I think I'm shining. So madaldal talaga ako. I know I pride myself into saying that na madaldal kasi iba negative yun eh. Ang daldal naman ito. But when I say it with pride. So
Very good.
warning, fair warning, Ronnie. Magdadaldal ako.
it's all, it's okay. Your
So
show.
what I know about you is your mentor is Mr. Ryan Cayabyab. Am I right? Is that
Okay, so
a fair?
mentor is a strong word. I only because I am incredibly inspired by him, and he has been my inspiration for a lot of things. But to be honest, we are more friends than I've never worked with Mr. C. So that's why it's usually mentor means that they've trained you and
Yes, yes.
they've kind of brought you up. I'll remember the first time I met Ryan was I signed up for a workshop that he was giving like ages ago. Ages ago, I was still I don't think I was in high school. I was in college, but he was giving a songwriting workshop, and I signed up for it. And he has 100 students at any given month, so he wouldn't remember me back then. But when I got the job at Hong Kong Disneyland, I was told to go to San Miguel, which is where
Yeah,
they
I
had the
remember. One San
auditions
Miguel,
back
yes.
then. And right, exactly. So, and I remember Russ Jordan told me, "Oh, look for me there, but you can just look for." He
Ryan
spelled the
Cayabyab.
name wrong at the time. It was like Ryan Sayabyab or something like that, and I was just like, oh, he's gonna be there
Okay.
because he was involved with the early part
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
Hong Kong Disneyland, and then Mr. C, strangely enough, he introduced himself to me, and he said, "Hi, I'm Ryan," and I'm like, "Of course you are." I mean, and then from then on we've been friends. But that's how humble he is. Like he was introducing
Yeah,
himself,
he's
and
not assuming.
since
Yeah.
then yeah, we've been friends, um, and I mean, I grew up watching Ryan Musikahan, and huge admirer of his work, and a lot of what I do is inspired by his styles. But yeah, mentor I think would mean that I've had the chance to work under him, which I actually haven't. In fact, I played for his tribute at the BGC Art Center in 2019 or 2020. But when he became national artist, they got me as the pianist for his tribute. Um, Again, he wasn't part of that tribute, so it was just all of these celebrity performers singing for him. So I technically didn't work with him at his tribute either.
Again,
So
not work with him. Okay.
yeah. So
Kasi
again,
yun
it's
yung
yeah.
that's the story that I got. Pero it means kumbaga the only time that you got connected is when you already are a musical director in Hong Kong Disneyland. Am I right? So yun yung
Starting,
parang
yeah,
of course aside from that you being the student of his before, right?
back
So
in the day, yeah.
yeah, I'm curious about how were you able to get that kumbaga in our language racket. Ang ganda naman ng racket na ang ganda naman ng
12-year
racket na musical
racket.
director, di ba? Paano ka napunta doon? How is that story?
Okay, so I was already in the from 2000 in 2000 to 2005. I was in the musical theater industry of the Philippines. So I was audition pianist. I was rehearsal pianist for a lot of things. In fact, only in 2005, no 2003, I MD'd. I was musical director for my first full musical called Honk, and then I would do other gigs. And then 2005, I got to do another musical called Once on This Island. When they opened up the job position at Hong Kong Disneyland, to be honest, back then there was a Bobby Garcia, the director, was already working. I think he was already hired for Hong Kong Disneyland, and I was the rehearsal pianist for all of the Atlantis productions. Atlantis is a theater company here in the Philippines, and
Philippines, yeah.
I was the pianist for all of the shows, and he suggested I I apply for the job, and I did. I mean, to be honest, I didn't think I'd get it because if you look at the requirements, we needed a musical degree, needed knowledge in this, knowledge in that, knowledge in this. And I had an accountancy degree and 5 years with a couple musical direction gigs. I mean, I was still starting off. So, but the interview went well enough. And to be honest, and I've always said this, I think Laurie Jordan, who's the VP of Entertainment at the time, I think she took a chance. And my boss was Lisa, a girl named Lisa Tsang. And I think they both really took a chance on a new guy who had the passion and definitely the want to go for the job. And I mean, nobody studies to become a musical director of a park. There's no degree you can sort of take up. So they knew that whatever would happen, I would get there and learn it. I would learn what I needed to learn, and that's how. So once I got the job, once I got the gig, to be honest, it felt like 12 years of school. No, maybe 3 years of school, and then 8 years of 9 years of running it. Yeah. So
Kasi when you talk about that the hiring, kumbaga hiring and firing, I also have another show. It's called OFW Entrepreneurs Podcast. Talks about being OFW and entrepreneurs. Shout out. I'll put the link below. But ang usual is hiring and firing sa mga jobs na yon. But then I'm curious about the question that struck you the most, that maybe nakita nila yung passion sa'yo, being a fresh face, a person that will do the job well, pero sugal. So what would be the question that you remember that made you get the job?
Oh. This is like
Ang layo
17 years ago. I don't. I can barely remember faces a year later. It's a
We're
good
going
question.
deep, Ron. We're going deep.
I can't say I remember the exact question. I mean, it was a typical, what do you
What do you
plan to
see
do?
yourself in 5 years?
What do you,
Something like that.
yeah, tell us about your experience. What do you plan to do? What are your ideas for the park and all that? And I just remember, well, to be honest, I remember that when I was doing the interview, I thought that the job was for a year contract. I did not, because all the dancers, all the singers, musicians were being offered year contracts. So I remember going into that interview saying, hey, I would love the job. And then I think I said at one point, and when I come back to the Philippines, I can continue to use what I've learned from there to continue. And I remember she said something like, oh, this is an open-ended job, and there's no contract. So I was just like, oh, okay. So that's at which point I had to sort of change it to, please accept me for the rest of my life, right? So I honestly, yeah, because it shifts. I mean, when you think you're up for a job for a year versus a long-term job, I think your approach is a little different. So
a little bit different.
I mean, it's going back to your question. I can't say exactly what question may have done it for me. All I know is that a week or so later, I got the yes, and I was booking my ticket a little later on.
So my intro to this question is actually appropriate. That paano mo nakuha yung racket? Because you went into it thinking it's a racket. Right? It's a 1-year racket, right? And then you're going back. Ang naisip ko dun sa answer mo is about me. When I went to Hong Kong Disneyland as well, ang lagi kong iniisip, pagbalik ko, I will have something to put into my resume, and it's very shiny. Like performer in Hong Kong Disneyland, 1 year performer in Hong Kong Disneyland, doing this, doing that, etc., etc. So going back to Philippines, it will be a shiny resume. Right? So yun yung thinking mo at that time. That's why, pero racket. And then it shifted to be a long-term racket.
How long were you there? Yeah.
11 and a half years. 11 and a half.
Wow. Grabe, no? Exactly.
I went
and
27.
7, you hit residency.
37.
Wow. Yeah. No, exactly.
It's a good experience. And I know I did have a shiny resume after, pero yung sumuko na yung katawan, siya yung nagsasabi na But I might have a resurgence, hindi natin alam. Kasi I
I'm
take care of my
sure
body
you,
naman.
I'm sure you
I,
can still dance if you.
yes. I know I can, but pero nag-enjoy ako dito sa pagdadaldal. Alam mo yun, nasa bahay ka tapos
Yeah.
nagdadaldal
Oh,
ka.
I think we've all shifted in this pandemic.
Yes. Yung with that mindset, kumbaga yung thinking na yon na uh, yung resume ko pagbalik shiny. Yun din ba yung naramdaman mo when you from the Hong Kong Disneyland days and then going back to the Philippines finally because you're in the Philippines right now. So
Yeah.
yung shift na yun din ba yung mindset mo, yung thinking mo na oh, my resume is shiny now and I bet I can do all the works that I want in the Philippines. Or how was that story?
So, yes, of course. I mean, I think one can, to be honest, it wasn't the primary thing on my mind that the kind of use the Disney name as a resume sort of to make it glow. But you're right. I mean, the thing is, like, what I have found coming back for someone in my position is I don't show. We don't use resumes a lot. As a musical director, I get work because of word of mouth. And you can probably ask that for a lot of musical directors in the business. It's all referrals. It's all directors saying who they. Yeah. So I mean, if it was a corporate job, absolutely, and I've had to turn in resumes for if I have to do an interview like this or in other cases like that. But very often, a lot of the work that I've done is because somebody referred me. And but of course, to your point, after 12 years at Disney, a lot of when I did get work, a lot of people were expecting Disney-esque output, right? So
Meaning
very
high
often I would
quality,
sit in high quality, but with the Disney sound. You know what I mean? And not not
parang na
plagiarizing.
ano ka,
But
parang na position ka, parang gano'n, typecast, something
yeah,
like that.
that exactly. Because I mean, then I wrote a children's musical, or they wanted. I did a Christmas event, or we did ASEAN closing ceremonies in 2017, and they wanted something with flourish. So of course, after 12 years of fireworks and Halloween and street parades and stage shows, I got the sound that. And mind you, that sound, the Disney sound evolves in itself. But to have something fun like that, and to be honest, that has been both a good thing and on a couple occasions, I've been criticized for sounding too Disney and not Filipino enough or something. But
It's
I
a
mean,
positive and a
it's
negative as well, yeah.
it's a positive and a negative because then everybody says, "Oh, that sounds like this. Oh, that sounds like that," which is why you have pegs. If it didn't sound like anything like Disney, then everyone would be like, "Oh, it doesn't sound like Disney," you know. So I think it's definitely much more of an advantage. But on the occasion where criticism has come in, it's been,
parang as a choreographer, meron kang certain style. I can relate to that. May certain style ka na, oh, gawa ni JP yan kasi ganito yung style niya. I know his style of choreography, ganyan. So you're also finding your voice. Is that also a struggle, I think? A struggle for you na to find your own voice separate from a typecast of Disney? Is there a story behind that struggle? If it is as well.
I have found not really because for me, mind you, because so if you're talking about styles, I'll move into like my composing style. So I've written several children's musicals, and people know, at least the people who hire me, whether it's been trumpets or like Repertory Philippines a couple of years ago, they know that I have a style that is relatively brighter and children happy, I guess, sort of in
Makes
that
children
sense.
smiles,
But
yeah.
yeah, and because of my experience, see, people will not hire me to write a heavy, complicated, dark, complex musical. Again, not that I can't, because I think it would be something that I would love to try. But in general, there are different, like Vince de Jesus. Vince de Jesus is a composer who I respect, and he wrote Himala. and he's written so many Filipino. He's one of the most prolific composers here, and he can do funny and he can do for kids, but he's also known for heavy songs to. I think did he have an album before, like songs to? I mean, get sad, get sad. I mean, he knows how to write the sort of hugot kind of pieces. I'm not that kind of composer, and people know that. So in general, I do like there was at the Ayala Triangle where it was at Christmas and it was also Disney themed. They wanted something nice and live. So it is. I am sort of cubbyholed, but it's not a cubbyhole I mind.
Okay. It's not something that you're angry about.
No, not in the
You're happy
least.
about that. That's good.
Yeah.
Ang challenge ko before when I went home, I I said to myself, kilala pa ba nila ako? Yung mga dati ko bang kakilala sa Pilipinas when I was a budding choreographer or a performer. Pagbalik ko, kilala pa kaya nila ako? Makakakuha pa ba ako ng racket? Diba? Because I think it's it's all about networking. Katulad ng sabi mo kanina, it's about word of mouth.
Exactly.
The things that the mga shows na ginagawa mo is about word of mouth. So, did you maintain those networks when you were in Hong Kong? Still in Hong Kong? And you were still in
Yeah.
contact with them?
Yes. No, I knew when I left.
Nourished.
Absolutely. When I left in 2005, of course, not knowing now that it was an open-ended racket, I mean, open-ended contract, I knew that one day I would come back. I knew it. I mean, I knew I would be in Hong Kong Disneyland for a long time, but I knew I'd be back. I didn't see myself retiring in Hong Kong. And I love making music in the Philippines. And if there's anything that I didn't get to do in Hong Kong Disneyland, is play the piano.
Yeah.
It's not something that I do for the job, so I kind of miss it. So it's as an accompanist and a musical director who likes being on the piano, I knew I would come back eventually. I didn't think 12 years later, to be honest. And I know people go up to 15 and 20, but I knew I would come back, so I knew not to let go of the ties. So over the 12 years,
Galing.
as any close friend of mine knows, I was in Manila a lot because it wasn't.
Just 2 hours away.
I got Cebu Pacific started releasing these super cheap flights. Communication made email and FaceTime made it easy to keep in touch. So I wrote a musical. I wrote a couple musicals while I was there. Every now and then I would fly in for a racket. That's a racket. Fly in Friday night, do a gig over Saturday, Sunday, fly back to Hong Kong on a 5 a.m. flight on Monday morning, and
then
go
come
straight
to
my
work at 8
desk
a.m.
job. Yeah, just try to stay awake. I never lost the ties because exactly as you said, and I think anybody who is abroad for an amount of time, exactly what you said is, I knew I didn't want to come back, and people were just like, okay, he was the musical director of Disneyland, but nobody knows him. I think I felt that was very important to keep for anybody. I mean, because as I said, I don't walk around with a resume. You kind of just hope that people like working with you and they get in touch with you again.
Yes. Kumbaga, pinahalagahan mo pa rin yung mga relationships that you built before. Entire tenure sa Hong Kong up until you went back. So it's still the same. Parang you're the same old you before. So, but I want to go further back because you keep on always talking about being a pianist, you being a accompanist sa mga theaters, etc. So I want to go back to your maybe college, yung sa accountancy. Before that, how did you go into being a pianista? Is that something that you 5-year-old, 3 years old, something like that?
So I was an artist up until the 7th grade. I loved drawing, I loved painting, I loved any form of art, sculpting, and all of that, all the way till the 7th grade. And to be honest, it took one concert. I watched a concert of the high school choir at the time, and I fell in love with musical theater. It was just like Les Miserables. It was a concert of Les Miserables, Phantom, Wala Pang Miss Saigon nun, and Cats, I think. So, and I remember thinking, what is this and why am I drawn to it so much? I was drawn right from that concert. And then that sparked it. And then I have my middle school teacher at the time, Mrs. De Silva, who I still tribute today as the reason I play the piano. She taught. I was in her choir, and she taught us how to read notes. And then, so I knew I got how to read notes from her. And then I would watch her play the piano. And every time we had choir class, I'd be like, I want to learn how to play the piano. So I would, at then one point, just go home every day and start learning chords, learning how to play songs and sing by myself. And then, and then in high school, I became the pianist of our barkada, where if we would jam, I would be on the piano.
Banda.
Banda, not bands. I mean, just choir.
Choir.
So hindi siya.
Hindi bands.
The banda were other people, but for me it was just choir and my choir friends, who I'm still very close to today. And but when after high school, I remember thinking, okay, well, I'm not going to earn money as a musician. That's not going to happen. So I literally asked my mom, what should I take at La Salle? Because my sister was already there, and I said, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just no idea, zero idea. And my mom said, why don't you take up accounting? Accountants make money. I remember that to this day. And I literally said, okay. And I checked it. It was that's how I decided that the next 4 years. No convincing whatsoever. I liked the math, and I figured accountancy was like math. It's really not. But it's but to be honest, I enjoyed accountancy. I passed the board exam. I mean, I enjoyed it. But after I took the board, I took a year off, and in that year, I found my way to theater. So that's my story there. It literally took one friend who asked, do you want to play for the auditions for a musical called The Little Mermaid by Trumpets? And from that started it. And again, I had no resume, but then somebody else hired me to play the piano for this and play the piano for that, and the ball kept rolling from 2000 to 2005.
It didn't end until now.
Yep. Well, no, exactly, right? Yeah.
Kasi as a parent of a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, I can relate to what happened to you would be a foresight of what can happen to my daughter. Kasi it's really as a struggle. Lumaki tayo na, okay, kailangan, from your mouth, sabi mo, walang pera sa pagiging musician. Diba?
Yeah.
And then you ask your mother, tapos the first thing na isip niya is about the pera, paghawak ng pera. And I don't know if you know, the plan is for my mom told me that I should be a CPA lawyer. So I went business administration in UST, but it's the same thing, but we also have accountancy subjects there. So I can relate to what you're saying. It's not really math. So because
not that simple.
I was a scholar sa DUST, and they're asking me to take a course that is sciences because it's DUST. And then my mom said accountancy. So I thought it's math, right? And then when I went there, he said it's not sciences. Okay, so I didn't get to hindi ko nagawa yung DUST scholarship ko because I went to commerce. So it's not math. Okay? Sa lahat ng mga may misconception dyan, it's not math.
Yeah. I thought it. Well.
Yeah. Yung sa anak ko naman.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sabi ko, I want to discover her talent, if that's the right way to say it. I want her to discover what she really likes to do. So I let her try everything. Like, go ahead, go do ballet. Go ahead, go singing class. Go ahead, piano, etc., etc. But now we've discovered that she's 9 years old right now. You from 7, she's 9 years old. She wants to draw. Like nakakatawa kasi whenever I punish her, kasi makulit, ganyan. So, go to your room, right? Ang ginagawa niya, kukuha siya ng papel kasi magdo-drawing siya. Kasi nga, it's supposed to be a timeout, but she finds a way to get a pen and a paper and then draw. So, when she gets outside the room after her punishment, she'll say, look, Dad, I draw this one. So it's not punishment. It's also my fault my fault because of the punishment of the timeout. She found a way to not be bored and then draw, and then until now she draws. And So every time may mga birthday gifts, it's all about arts and crafts.
Nice.
So ang dami na namin. So I'm planning to buy her an architecture table so that we can nourish it. Because right now I know yung parents mo sinabi mo accountancy ka, but I'm curious from 7 up until college, did she support you being a pianist? Like
Well, it's support in the sense that they came to choir concerts, but you can't. I mean, support really only came after the fact that I decided to not do accountancy, and I think what was the sort of tougher thing there because I mean we all have hobbies, and it was thought of
yes.
as a hobby
Yes.
until all the way until the end of college, and because I was when I was done with my degree, I was ready to start at Procter and Gamble. I had gone in for an interview and was told to go in for the
You
physical
did the works. You did
already.
the works, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was that was kind of where I thought I was heading. So the music thing was really just a sideline hobby. But I think, and so they supported in the way that any parent back in the 90s would have done. We're like, okay, that's cute, that's
That's what
cute.
you like,
So
so
make sure you have a real job. And
yeah.
then, and then, and then after, to be honest, like for 2000 to 2005, um, I'm sure they were supportive in the sense that they would come to my shows, but I'm sure in the back of their head it's just like, well, is this a long-term thing? Because or will you continue to earn money and make a living? And like to be honest, it got to the point where of course I would always invite them to the musicals that I played for and all that, but I would specifically try to flex the shows where I get to work with celebrities because it'd be
Look
just like,
mo,
okay, mom,
kasama ko
hey,
si
look, ma, look, I'm with Lea Salonga in this show, or I'll go to Cedros in this show, or just to make sure that they
pump
got that
up.
I wasn't that they were pumped up gigs, and because to be honest, when you're starting off, what 500 peso rackets is exactly what I was playing for, and or can where you spend more on the transportation going or the food than the amount that you make at the gig. And so it was very, of course, very different trying to get your name out there and getting people to trust you and like you, I think. And so I think they were supportive, as any parents who were in the back of their head, I'm sure, were wondering. So when 2005 came in and I worked for Hong Kong Disneyland, that was where I could
This
treat
is it.
them, flew them to Hong Kong, and be just like, hey, this is both
Look,
corporate and something I like, something I love to do. So I think
it's like a
that
real job connected to what I am doing or as a hobby. It's like that, right? So
exactly,
it connected
exactly.
together.
Because in 2005, like I was still thinking, oh, no, maybe okay. I did the board in 1999, so maybe 2 years of dabbling in music. I thought, okay, I can always go back to accountancy. I
Yeah,
can
yeah, yeah.
always go
The
back.
fallback.
Then at one point, I think in 2003, that was when I said, nope, I'm
Enough.
gonna make this work. And again, it hasn't been the easiest thing, but of course, after Hong Kong Disneyland, financially, it became a nice, solid gig.
Yes. This is leadership, so I want to ask the question about that shift. That shift specifically. You told me meron kang from 1999 to 2005 uh, discovering yourself. I don't know. You're just dipping into the waters, maybe checking if it's lukewarm or not. If it's cold, if it's cold,
Yeah.
you get out of the way, right? So, is gusto ko malaman yung mindset mo no how or why did you decide na okay, I'm going 100% on this route already. No more of the accountancy.
I think it was just you reach that moment where you're like, I will not be happy if I went back to accountancy. I think it was I don't remember the exact moment, um, but yeah, like it was just a let's make it happen. Um, wait, I think I had a
A
moment
hunch
on
maybe or
a
a certain
flight.
feeling na
Yeah, I think it was on a. I think I started it like now that I think about it because I did rent Singapore, and it was a Manila company for the Atlantis, a Manila cast, and they had a Manila run, but then they did a Singapore run. I wasn't supposed to be part of the Singapore run because I was just, again, rehearsal pianist for the show, for the rehearsals in Manila, and I forgot what year. I mean, this might have been 2001. And I remember last minute, literally a week before they took off, they said, Ronnie, we need you as the pianist for the show. And can you fly for a month to Singapore? And I think again, it's been so long since I've had thought about it, but I remember getting on that flight thinking, I'm gonna make this work because I don't want to. I mean, again, and I think I would have been happy as an accountant if I had gone there and not
Yeah.
known this other life that I'd be
You still
living.
make it happen.
But
Yeah.
at least I would make it work exactly. And I think it was on a flight where I was just like, I'm gonna make this. This has got to work. This is my happiness and making money can collide. I can
Yes.
be one. So
I
not
will
collide, but
smush you
can
together
unite, and
forcefully, and you can't do
I'm
anything
gonna
about
be
it.
one
Something
of
like that.
yeah. And again, I know that is not an easy thing to do. Again,
Yeah.
like luckily, life made things good, but not everyone can get the job as a musical director of theme park abroad that and make that work. So I totally acknowledge how I was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. It's that 2% luck.
Totally.
That is the 2% luck that went into it. Because I remember my
There's
mom.
a go.
Go ahead.
No, no, go ahead. Sorry, yours you say.
I remember my mom na sabi ko sa kanya. This is also a shift on my on my side because I'm a mama's boy, so I ask her also. Just like you ask your mom, what am I going to do with my life, something like that, right? Because I was not able to graduate on time because walang pera, etc., etc. I had to work for myself. And then the time came that I have money na sa pag-racket ko rin sa mga sa sayaw. And then sabi ko sa kanya, okay, I already asked the dean, pumayag na siya sa akin na mag-aaral ulit ako to finish my studies kasi I still have 6 units to finish to graduate. Until now, I didn't finish it. So sabi ko sa
Oh,
kanya,
okay.
okay, I already asked the dean of the business administration to re-enroll, etc. And she said yes, but it's on the second sem. So we have to wait for that sem. And then I auditioned in October, got the call October 21st, and I'll be flying November November of that year 2008. And I told my ma, sabi ko sa kanya, ma, gift ko sa iyo yung diploma. But then you want me to work, right? This is the work. And again, kaya ko kinikwento to because it really the situation forced the both of them to come together.
Yeah.
I didn't flew, and then that's the story of the Hong Kong Disneyland for 11 years.
But mind you, your story is very familiar to musicians in Hong Kong Disneyland. If you ask them, not everyone graduated with a degree in music, but because that's what happens when you try to get a degree in music, you start learning and then you meet people, then you get rackets, and then you start earning money, and then puestos come in, and honestly, that's where natural gifts come in terms of like, okay, I know how to read music, I know how to, there's people who study there for 4 years and can't sight read, and but there are people who are just starting off and know how to sight read, and as I said, like if you can get the job at Hong Kong Disneyland without a degree, and go
a
for
bonus,
it. No,
no?
I mean, it's a bonus. I mean, but again, I would highly recommend finishing a college degree, as we know jobs at places like Hong Kong Disneyland aren't always forever sometimes. So you want that sort of safety that if you have to go back. But as you said, like I'm already earning the money that is the point of getting the degree. So can I pause
But I
that?
let her choose.
I get what
I
you're
want to go
saying.
back to that because I let her choose. I said, so what would I do? So she go, go ahead, fly to Hong Kong. It's an opportunity of a lifetime because we are Disney family. We watch all the Disney movies. So I remember I know all the tracks in Lion King. I have that cassette tape, and my favorite track is the Be Prepared. Ni Scar. Yeah, alam ko pa yung background na sinasabi. The asset is spanning, decades of denial, something like that.
Nice.
So when I mentioned the Hong Kong Disneyland, it's like something Yes, it will always be a yes to her. So I want to go back to the origin of this question because it goes back to how I'm going to do it with my daughter. Right, so I want to find her the because I want to relate this to the parents that are listening here. It might be a different story sa panahon natin natin sa
Yeah,
ngayon.
no.
Sa ngayon, all the hobbies right now ay hindi na applicable yung wala kasing pera sa musician eh. Wala kasing pera sa nagdo-drawing. Wala kasing pera sa nag-gaming. Wala kasing nagpe-pera hindi na ngayon ganun eh. It's not true anymore na walang pera sa whatever it is na hobby ginagawa mo. Kasi the whole world shifted, especially now for the last 2 years. Lahat naging content creator. 'Di ba? Naging
Yeah,
content creator.
exactly, right? Exactly.
It's a shift in mindset. And then when I did this at home, she saw it. She saw that, oh, this is something that you can do. Magdadaldal is a work that you can actually earn from. So it means I have the permission to do whatever I want and then make it so that the money comes in.
Yeah.
Hindi na siya harang. It's not a wall anymore na yung sentence natin na wala kasing pera sa. Kasi yun din yung sentence sa akin eh. Ba't ka magsasayaw? Wala namang pera dyan. You have to finish your college, etc., etc., etc. But then I didn't finish. And then I went there. And then it went to up to here. So for me,
Yeah, no,
if someone wants to
absolutely.
go to college, maybe for architecture because you need that for anything that needs board exam. Go ahead, you have to do that. You have to finish that college. But anything else, go ahead. I'll let you do because sometimes ito yung ano ko dati. We talk about this. I talk about this with Victor and our sons and daughters. Na sinasabi namin, before our hobby is an hour. I think you can relate. Mayroon kang ginagawang mag-pianist ka after your high school studies, right? And then
Exactly.
piano lesson an hour. Sabi ko, what if balik rin natin? Gawin kong 6 hours yung drawing mo, and then maybe 1 to 2 hours, I will homeschool you to get that same academic. You have to do that.
Yeah.
Right? So
you-
basic arithmetic, etc., etc. You have to read and write, etc., etc. So babaliktarin ko siya. Go ahead with your hobby. Make your hobby your job. So that you
Yeah.
can discover it. And then you will discover na, hindi pala to. You shifted. Because for me, after 10 years, I want to shift into talking to a microphone into the air, right? So
Yeah,
I
exactly.
didn't know that I can do that, right? So if I didn't do the 10 years of dance, I wouldn't go to this. So I want her to do this early. 10 years of drawing from 7 to 17. And maybe you change your mind. From 17, you did ballet. 17 to 27. Okay. So you have 3 shifts of different quarters in your life that you can do because we started early going to what is your happy.
Exactly. No, exactly. And again, I think what we have to acknowledge is not everyone is like that. It's great that I think that you were put in that position, so then you want to have your child have that same
Get that version.
choice to make that same to have that same story. I do. My parents probably were not given the same choice, so
Yeah.
it was actually a surprise that they said, okay, go ahead, make music. If I have children one day, it would be the same. I would love for them to be able to do what they love and hopefully make a living out of it. I think because doing what you love and make a living, as we discussed, are not don't always overlap.
Yeah.
So,
We just forced it
but
together.
and and let's be honest, there are a lot of people doing what they love and barely making it
Ends meet,
through.
yeah.
Or and especially at a time of the
Right now.
pandemic where you have a lot of theater people who could not do theater and so turned to cooking, turned to corporate jobs, turned to something they normally wouldn't. And I think but to your point, the whole job universe has shifted, and there are ways to earn a living both ways. So it's great that you can allow that you want your kid to have those same opportunities. So,
The reason
but
why I told that story, the a lengthy conversation about that, is I know you have a pandemic struggle also. Because you're in theater, you have to go face to face, you have to rehearse, so it has to be you have to be there. So I'm curious on how were you able to pivot onto the pandemic scene, even if your industry requires you to be face to face.
So for a while, I, like everybody else, when the pandemic hit, sat down and lived off savings for a while. Because nobody knew, like, okay, how do we, the
What do I do?
theaters are closed, I can't give voice lessons, a lot of us kind of, for maybe a couple months, kind of just sat down, trying to held on to our mental health, and couldn't figure out what to do. Slowly, other people started the ball rolling, and that was online voice lessons. I think with a lot of time, with a lot of children at home, parents were looking for things for their kids to do, and so the market, the workforce of online teachers started to grow, realizing, okay, well, kids can't just be at home all day not doing anything. So let's find them something creative to do. And that's where my friends started teaching voice online, started shifting to teaching instruments online. And at one point, I kind of decided, okay, why not try to teach voice online as I would in person back in the day. I remember I called up my friend Kaisa at the time, and I said, how do you do it? And she gave me some tips on how to get started, because she was already teaching. And that clicked. That clicked for me. That my schedule filled up, and that was 2020. It's 2022 now, and everything has shifted online.
Are you still doing it? Are you still doing it?
Yeah, and in fact, like I give workshops at the BGC Arts Center, and they used to be in person, but in 2020 we were trying to figure out, so do we cancel or are we doing this online? And we decided, no, let's do it online. And that became a different thing, because learning how to work with one person, it became very different when you have 8 people on your screen trying to get kids to focus on you and
navigating
get
how
them
to
engaged.
mute themselves.
Oh, yes, exactly. How to mute themselves, how to make sure that they're not doing other things, because they're in their own homes. So you're talking there and they're like, and you're like, okay, I've lost that kid. So it's that whole world took learning, but we're also in 2022. So it's a little, I know there are still people adjusting to it, but I feel I'm glad I started in 2020 adjusting to this new platform, because otherwise I'd still be like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And luckily, like today, more live gigs are coming in. Like I literally am playing for something on Monday. I have, I had an online gig this morning. I mean, the live performances are coming back this year a bit, but we all shifted and learned how to use Zoom and how to work on the sound, and it all worked out.
Yeah, this whole setup of mine is a testament of how I learned, because I started. If you watch my first ever podcast, it's a brown curtain that hides me, because I'm also a dark. So it hides me. So in my dark earphone, so the only thing that they see is my eyes and my teeth. So
We all learn,
from
exactly.
that, and then we learn. So I'm curious about your what what is the thing that you did selfishly? Like, for example, watch the entire Netflix catalog. Your maybe a
During the
vice that you
pandemic?
discovered during the pandemic, during that 2-month season that you told me that you did nothing. Because at
Nothing.
that time I told myself, because I started this podcast at that time. So I told everybody, I say to the podcast, if you're not doing anything and you're not trying to do anything, yes, don't do anything. You have my permission for you not to do anything and do whatever you want to do that you were not able to do when you said, I'm working.
Yeah.
Do it now. What
It-
was that? What
yeah.
was that to you?
Honestly, I just exercise. I got on YouTube and started 5 p.m. exercising, getting watching videos and following along. Which again, I mean, when I was working, it was just like, oh, I'll figure out when I can do that. But now with all this time, and to be honest, pandemic life was waking up at noon, waking up at 1 p.m.
No
Trying to
shaving.
figure out what
I
to
shaved just
do.
last night,
Yeah,
so
no, exactly. I mean, it's like you may or may not brush your teeth. You know, I mean, and then you have the afternoon to kill. Then you're on social media watching everybody else do nothing, and then it was all about getting to the next meal. Like, okay, it's lunch now. Isn't what time's dinner? And then there was a whole thread. There was a whole group that showed up called Midnight Snackers. Were you part of that?
no, 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 no.
There was a
Midnight
whole
snackers.
somebody created a midnight snacker group because people weren't
You're
doing
trying to
anything during the
find
day.
something to eat.
Their
Yeah.
nights were wide awake, so everybody was showing everyone, oh, what I'm eating at one
This is
o'clock
what
in the
I'm eating.
morning, at 2 o'clock,
I think
and it
I
was a
saw that,
feast,
but I'm
and
not
it
part
was
of the group.
comforting. I think it was comforting. Like the group kind of grew, and obviously somebody had the idea that everybody was eating at midnight. So I think it was a lot of eating and exercising. I can't say I did
That's
anything
good. That's good because
that
you
I
went to exercise. Did that stay until now?
no, no.
Because you're working already. Come on.
Yeah, the online lessons came in. The last thing I wanted to do is
Went
spend
back.
more time in front of the thing. I mean, unfortunately, but because we couldn't even leave the house, so it wasn't like we could do what our hearts really wanted to, because we were confined to the spaces that we had. I could see I didn't. Not that I couldn't, but I remember at the time you felt like, oh, I can't see my parents because I don't want to possibly
Yeah,
infect
yeah,
them, because we didn't know how nothing
We
screwed
don't
us
know
up more
anything.
than
Yeah.
asymptomatic, right? I mean, diseases used to
That's
be
a
like, okay, I have a cold and it
is
will
that a trick
show.
word, right? Asymptomatic is a trick word
Exactly,
for me.
right? That's what, like, I mean, like, everything messed us up when something could be asymptomatic, and that's when we didn't want to approach people, because you could have it and not realize it, and because if this would be so much easier if as soon as you got it you had a sign and you knew to stay home. So
We
I
don't
mean,
know.
that at the time kind of kept us all at home, if not even scared of, like, okay, did the maid go out to and accidentally talk to someone and then bring it into the house? And so I mean, it was such a scary time. So I'm luckily there are people who I'm sure dived into their passions, painting, drawing, composing, and all that. But I remember just being in this sort of numb state
Lull.
of yeah, a super lull. I knew
Like
it would come back eventually. Like live events would come back eventually, but I remember at the time it was just like, I miss people, I miss my friends, I miss, yeah.
I
So
remember one moment. I will not forget this because I think I have 3 days that I literally woke up, sat down, looked at my wife, and what she's doing is just looking at me. And then we smiled. And then we said,
aw.
let's eat.
Yeah. I get that. I
That
totally get that.
sums it
Yeah.
up, right? Sat
Yep.
down, woke up late, sat down, and did nothing for an hour. Nothing, like literally
Yeah.
nothing, and then decided to eat. That's it.
Yeah.
But
As I
then
told you, it was all about getting to the next meal. Like,
yeah, because it started with me also. That's why I'm curious when I ask you about did it stay did the exercise stay? Because I started to exercise as well. I did the heat. I was inspired by Eric Queen, and he's like 41-year-old fit person when he shared it. And I talked to him. I said, how did you do this? And he gave me tips and all of the videos that I need to get. So I did that, and then my mind worked, and then I did this podcast, and then I did the podcast for an hour for one guest every single day for 30 days. So I have 30 guests in that podcast, and then it didn't stop. and then opportunities came in. So what I'm saying is, you need that pause in order for you to get to the next thing that you have to do. So to anyone who's watching right now, if you are still on that pause, you still have my permission to do that. So that you
There's
can
a
get to the next.
line to the next step. No, absolutely. There's a line from a film. Was it Made in Manhattan or something? That's it. Sometimes we are forced into directions that we ought to have found for ourselves, and I think that's the pandemic. Of course, we would never know what life is if the pandemic didn't happen. I mean, life would have continued as is, but it did force us to kind of reevaluate um, what we wanted to do with our lives. And again, I do understand that that's a privilege. I do get that
Yeah.
not
Not
everyone
everybody can
has the
do that.
privilege to wake up till 12 and all that. So it's I when you said struggle, I don't like to use the word struggling during the pandemic because I didn't struggle in the same way in the way that some
In
other people
comparison, yeah.
really struggled. Yes, it was hard in my own sort of in my own world, but I do completely understand that there are other people out there who were not as lucky and could not afford to sit on savings for 2 weeks and all that. And that was the kind of hard. I think that's what kind of made our minds kind of go because you also
Yeah.
know that some people can't think about what their next meal is because they weren't earning income for it.
But the good thing
But
is,
yeah,
they now prioritize saving. It's
yeah.
also a
I
lesson in
mean that
itself, right? That also
absolutely. Yeah.
became a lesson in itself. You always say that go to the next level, to the next thing that you want to do, and to you discovered what you want to do in this pandemic, right? So I want to ask your future plans. Is there a shift coming to you in your life also that because right now we all know you said it's opening up face to face theater. I saw that the TVs are also pouring in audience sometimes. So with that in mind, because you foresee stuff, you foresaw that you need to be connected to your peers, even if you went to your 10-year racket, 12-year racket. You foresaw that you want to go to the path of being a pianist and make sure that they go together,
To stay
they go
happy. Yeah.
together. So is there a shift in the horizon for you, Ronnie?
Yeah, and sorry to backtrack a little because you're talking about shifts and that shift from Hong Kong back to Manila life, right? Which I thought was the last shift that I would have to do, and then we went into the pandemic, which was a whole other shift
Yeah, yeah.
in work. So now, as things are normalizing, it's like, is it a shift or did we just take a pause from what was life in 2017 when I moved back? In terms of future plans, I think it's more of the same. Like currently, I more of the same, but just finding ways to develop myself. I think as a musician, I'm scoring my first film. I'm
Wow.
I'm like writing a musical is not new to me anymore because I've done that. Hopefully more events come up, but it's like I do think about that every now and it's like, okay, what is my next big want of that I haven't done? And I mean, a part of me is like, should I learn how to orchestrate for an orchestra? And I'm like, I don't think that's me. Or is there do I want to play in play the piano with outside of the country? Like I've lived outside for 12 years. I don't want to live outside again. So
Been there, done that.
I to
Check.
be honest, like I'm at the point in my life where I'm just like, let's get back to live events, and I'll know the next shift when a spark of an idea happens, and I'm like, hang on, I want to do that. It hasn't happened yet, to be honest, in recent times, because I feel like we're just getting through the pandemic. Let's get back to live theater. Let's get back to live workshops. Um, but I am waiting for that spark of I want something different,
Inspiration
and
again.
I don't have it right now. Yeah, I mean, I'm inspired and think, but a new inspiration, I think, is what is
It's
what
due.
your question was leading
It's
towards.
due.
And
Yes, it's due, but
yeah,
not yet here. Nahihinog
yeah,
na
yeah,
lang.
exactly.
It's
It'll
boiling.
happen.
It's it's
It'll
there.
happen again. Not that there aren't things that I haven't achieved that I want, but I'm not driven towards a spark yet, right this second. So
I'm
we'll
curious
see what
about
happens.
how you started that answer, because sabi mo you wanna know yourself, self discovery, self awareness. Is there anything the 2 years gave you that because sigurado ka eh. When you talk, you talk like for sure. Orchestra, that's not for me. You already know. That's self discovery. That's being self
Yeah.
aware. Is there any one or two things that the pandemic made you aware, forced you to be aware that it's a good thing that you can use that in the future?
I think as blunt as this is, if the pandemic enforced an idea that I always had in that I sort of always carried with me, but it kind of made it stronger, is I always told myself I would not be stuck. And I would always try to figure out, take sort of points in my life and look around and say, am I stuck? Am I stuck in a location? Am I stuck in a situation that I don't like? Am I stuck? Um, uh, because that's what happened in the pandemic. I found myself stuck,
Stuck.
and that's where I'm just like, okay, because when you realize you're stuck, that's I think one of the best moments where you kind of go, okay, how do I get unstuck? Like how do I shift out of this? How do I move out of this situation? But again, and not you're not stuck. To define stuck means you can't get out of it unless and you're unhappy. There has to be an element of unhappiness. You can't be stuck in happiness. In my definition, like I'm not stuck if I'm happy or if I'm in a good place, but I'm stuck if I find myself wanting something and that happened in the pandemic. Stuck in financially, stuck in other ways, and I'm like, okay, I need to get out of this situation, and that's what kind of pushed me. And I found myself unstuck later on. So if there is anything that kind of enforced what I already had in mind was to 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 always evaluate where you are and see if you're happy, if you're driven, if
Are you happy in this situation? If not, do
if
something
you're
about it.
happy in situation, and it's like, are you stuck? Like if and then the next step is how do you get unstuck, so that you move on.
Ang galing. It's something na maybe again it's coming from privilege na we're able to do something that we wanted to do, but you have to look way back in our lives. The story that Ronnie told us and my story. I know na nasabi ko yun sa mga previous episodes here na sometimes when ang audience tumitingin lang ngayon lang yung nakikita nila. Yung, ang ganda kasi ginagawa mo kasi dancer ka kasi, may talent ka kasi, mayroon ka kasi magpiano, ganito ganyan, kaya nagagawa mo yung gusto mo, etc. etc. No, that's not the situation. We forced ourselves into this situation, and that shift took Ronnie 5 years in the making. Took me lots of hardships before I get into this situation. So if you're in a hardship situation right now, push through. Maybe that's the thing that I can tell you. If you're happy with that situation, even if you don't have money, push through. The money will come in.
No,
Money will come
absolutely,
in.
and
Might take a long time, but it will.
yeah, no, I mean, and I'm gonna, and this is not in any way self-deprecating, but I'm not the best pianist or the best musician out there. I'd like to pride myself in being someone that hopefully people like to work with. Because trust me, there are people with musical degrees who can play the piano much better than I can, and who can orchestrate and who can do all of these things that musicians, that some really talented musicians can. But as we said, networking comes with likability, and I'd like to believe that I'm a
You're
patient
likable.
person who yeah, exactly. And I kind of, and that's how you make it work. Because I mean, and yes, hard work. And as you said, yeah, oh no, because he's a dancer, but mind you, or as a musician or as a singer. I remember getting asked once in an interview, and it was press, and saying, well, what do you say to musicians who don't have your opportunities? And I'm like, because because the question was not every musician can earn a living,
Yeah.
thing, and I'm just like, well, kanya-kanyang, everyone has to work hard in their own ways. Exactly, like as you said, we made it work. I mean, in a yes, there's an element of luck, but there is definitely a lot of hard work behind it. I'm glad. I mean, 12 years at Disney, there was no way that I could slack off. You know what I mean? That was required the best of me. Overnights galore,
Yeah.
taking notes and reformatting my creativity to kind of go, okay, that will be better for it, and all that. That was a ton of work that I get to use now in experience for my gigs. But as you were saying, there is hard work that comes to, and it starts with deciding, okay, I don't want to
Yes.
be where I am right now.
Yes, this
So
starts from deciding. Because when I decided I want to go all the way with the performance, then all the actions that I did is for that. When I decided that I want to
yeah,
do this podcast, then I bought the mic. You know what I mean? Because I discovered basag pala yung ano ko. Basag pala yung mic ko. Yung mic pala nitong laptop na to is pangit. Yung camera pala niya is pangit. Ganito pala. Kailangan pala ganito. So it might look that it's easy, but it's not. Because again, balik kayo sa original video ko, sa start na mga paggaginagawa kong video, pati yung ginamit kong ano is basag-basag lahat, at saka wala. Yung kama ko lang, nagbabounce yung mismong video kasi nandun ako sa kama, nakaupo. Dahil walang
yeah,
space eh. Sinasarado ko yung pinto para lang makapag-record ako ng hindi dumarating yung mga anak ko. Di ba? So, everybody has their own hardship, and I acknowledge that you have your own. Ikaw na nanonood ngayon, I acknowledge that you have your own, and there's nothing we can say that can make you move, but we hope that we can inspire you through our story, our shift that we made, na you can also do it as well. Na kaya mo yan, kumbaga. Yun na lang. Kaya mo yan.
exactly, exactly.
I always have something in mind that I want to impart. I already readied a story in mind to tell a person I don't know and how to help that person in his life wherever he is. So I already have that maybe a mantra that I want to push to the world. Something that I want everybody to know. Is there a message, something like that, that you can also share to our audience aside from all the stories that you've inspired us already?
I mean, I think the best advice I could give anyone is, I guess it would be in line with my whole idea of not being stuck. Is know where you don't want to be. I think knowing where you want to be can always change and can always uh, develop as time goes by. But know where you don't want to be, I think, is one of the best skills and one of the best things to sort of think about, because that will push you. And even I had no idea that when I took that board, that when I checked accountancy on on that application form, that I would find myself doing musical theater, writing musicals, or being in Hong Kong for 12 years, let alone MDing ASEAN closing ceremonies, right? Or sorry, and not to sort of pat my own shoulder, but like receiving the TOIM. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
none of that was planned. I mean, I just knew, constantly moved in the direction of like, okay, I feel stuck. I don't want to be here. What do I need to do? And I kind of, so that I can get unstuck. So I think one of the if is to one of the best advice I can give anybody is to always have that moment of looking around, saying, am I where uh, do I want to be here or not? I think both physically and both mentally. And if the answer is yes, I want to be here, then you're good.
Continue.
But if it is I don't want to be here, then do something. And it doesn't have to, you don't have to know where you're going. You don't have to know exactly what you want, but know what you don't want. Know where you don't want to be. And I
Yeah,
think that's a great starting point for anybody.
Yeah. It's the process of elimination. It's Sherlock Holmes,
Oh, totally, right?
right?
Exactly.
Sherlock Holmes. So it's just you. There's a TED talk
Scratch that, scratch that, scratch that. Yeah.
there's a TED talk that I watched. It's I think that it's from Tim Ferriss. It's a fear setting. It's what you said. What you fear, what's the situation that you fear, know it. If you're there, get out of there. If you're not, avoid that road. Because all other roads will lead to some place that you have to be. But you just have to know the place you don't want to be.
Yeah.
So
No, exactly.
it's fear setting. You set your fears and then go around that. Set the go to pivot, shift. This is leadership,
Yeah.
by the way. So I think that sums it up, Ronnie. I'm glad that I was able to talk to you for this leadership. I know because the purpose of this podcast, Ronnie. Because when I started, it's about financial education. But then sabi nila, wala kasi akong pera, ang swerte mo kasi. And then I started the OFWers podcast because the way you get money is you have to start a business, I said. But then I said, wala akong puhunan. So I think what happened is they are not the leaders of themselves yet. So that's why I started this podcast, LeaderSHIFT, so that we hear stories from people who did their shifts. I either be right or wrong so that you can just copy it. Utang na loob, copy nilang. Hindi mo na iisipin pa
Yeah.
yung idea, right? Gagayahin mo siya at if you're on this road and to the arts, to the music industry, then here's Ronnie for us. That's why I asked the leaders of the industry so that any industry that you want to go in, I hopefully have that episode. And then you could go to that route. Right, so
That's
through
great. Thank you
self-awareness,
for having me.
forcefully putting the hobbies into your career, right? A nine
Exactly.
to five job. So, and I appreciate that, Ronnie. And I'm sure you have shows. I'm sure I can find you somewhere in social media. Where would we see Ronnie Fortich?
Oh, just publicly on. I just have an Instagram account that called Ronnie's Company Call. I'll send it to you later. But Ronnie's Company Call that hasn't been again. There's been a lull, but it's kind of where I post just musical things that I get to work on that I can talk about, of course. But in general, yeah, that it's that's where people sometimes contact me for voice lessons, my workshops at the BGC Arts Center, um, and then just random gigs everywhere. So,
So
but
basically, if I want to get
not
your
not racket,
services,
not 12-year rackets
I
anymore.
go there.
Yeah,
If I want
just
to
go
get your
ahead.
service,
Just
just go
message me on
there.
Ronnie's Company Call.
Garner's company. So that's your
Yeah,
funnel. Only that IG account.
yeah, exactly. That IG account.
So, okay, wala na kayong, hindi
I'll
na kayo
send you the
malilito
link
ha.
later.
Hindi na yun yung sinasabi, I have Facebook, etc., etc. No. Just go to his IG account. If you wanna go have classes with him, just pick his brain and then just go there.
Facebook
And,
is more personal. No, yes, people do actually message me on Facebook. But I always find Facebook more of a personal space. So
business is
open
IG.
to the public will be the Instagram account.
I see.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. I appreciate that. Here are the shifts, leaders of the industry you can hear from. And our today's guest, Ronnie Fortich. Thank you. Good day.